Hello everybody listening. I'd just like to let you know that our presentation today will be about healthcare differences between here and India, but before we really get started, me and my homie Lyle here, we're actually going to do a little bit of talking about what you shouldn't do in either of these situations to keep your health in good shape. Here you can see Radagast the Great, who's probably one of the greatest magicians of all time, yet there was one really terrible downside about his magician power, and that was his shroom taking, unless you want to be like Radagast the Great. In all of the negative ways, minus the magical powers, and all the great stuff he does, you should probably not take shrooms. Next, you can see here is Gollum. Gollum got too attached to his ring and began eating too much raw meat, and with it, a lot of goblin flesh, which I don't think is very good for your immune system. Cannibalism doesn't get you all the correct nutrients your body needs to survive properly. And this last picture here, Gandalf. As you can probably see, Gandalf smokes a lot, and weed really is not very good for you. I mean, putting a lot of smoke into your body, and then all the after effects that come with it, minus all the magical powers, you'll be very messed up, and it won't be very good for your body or any of your body systems, and you'll probably end up with a lot of different types of lung diseases, cancers, respiratory diseases, etc., etc. So, my name's Hari, and this is Lyle, as I might have mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
He's my homie here, and we're here to talk about healthcare, not weed, as I might have previously mentioned.
With Gandalf.
Yeah, because drugs are bad, so...
So we're going to talk about differences in the healthcare between the U.S. and India, but first we want to make sure that you all know that you should spend your money on healthcare instead of weed, because weed is not good and healthcare is beneficial.
But I thought Gandalf was a good person.
He's a great person. Take out the weed and he could win a Nobel Prize for magic. Well, anyway, so healthcare between the U.S. and India. So first, what is healthcare?
Well, you see, healthcare incorporates a few different things that maybe you haven't thought about. I mean, healthcare doesn't actually incorporate dental care and orthodontics. It also incorporates your insurance, some of your health services. What else, Lyle?
I think it also includes, like, emergency room treatments and stuff like that, which, and insurance. And insurance is one of the greatest differences between U.S. and India, because in India, insurance is very expensive, and it's only making its debut very recently. Whereas insurance in the U.S. has been here for a while, and almost everyone has insurance, like Obamacare, which is a health care service that also does insurance.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. But insurance is also, it's kind of dependent on a few other factors. In India, it's massive. There's this thing called the caste system. The caste system, basically, you have your own place in society, and you're either in a low caste or a high caste, or the high caste include, like, the wealthy aristocrats, or people who are related to really, really rich families, and they all have a lot of money, and they can use it on whatever they want, and they're in the higher caste. And then you have all the people who work on the farms, and who are just like ordinary people who are like a middle class, and then a low class of all the beggars and homeless people, and who happen to be the lowest class. And
as we just illustrated, the people in the lower class don't actually get the insurance part of the healthcare, because the insurance is expensive, and it's pretty much reserved for the aristocrats.
And some of the middle class also.
Yeah. So, this leads into our differences in environment and how that affects the health between here and India. So how is the environment in India, Hari?
It's not like the greatest place, but it's really nice. It's got like nice warm temperatures and everything, but it also has some factors that could add on a little bit to disease. A lot of disease piggybacks on the dust. There's a lot of dust, so those diseases can like attach themselves to little particles and that
fly through the air and survive in the heat, right?
Yeah, and that heat's another issue.
Yeah, in Oregon, the heat's not an issue because it's pretty cold, so we have different diseases, and it rains a lot, which decreases the amount of dust-borne disease, but then brings up the amount of waterborne diseases. So, yeah, and that affects, again, the health, because there are there's more water here, and there's actually a lot of water in Oregon, a lot of waterborne diseases, therefore.
There are also a lot of trees, right?
Yeah.
Are there any tree-borne diseases?
Not that I know of, but I don't know. But, Gandalf, no,
well, there was one person, wait, it's coming.
Radagast the Green, who, does his shrooms. He'd be at home here in Oregon where the shrooms growing, because there's a lot of water.
Yeah,
so,
well, let me be personally glad that there isn't too much rain in India, but there is some, but instead of rain, we get the rain of mosquitoes. There's a lot of mosquitoes in India, and they contribute to vector-borne diseases, such as, like, malaria. Thankfully, we don't have too much malaria, but there is a lot of mosquitoes and other smaller diseases that are transmitted with it.
It's not good. So, how does the environment affect health, Hari?
As I said, there's some factors that, like, really kind of push the diseases further. Another one here is overpopulation. How overpopulation, if there's a lot more people in a smaller space, you can have a lot more contact and airborne disease spread.
That sounds right. Yeah, here in Portland, Oregon, there's not so much overpopulation and overcrowding, which leads to less spreading of diseases. And on top of that, medical wards and doctors' offices are much more sterile and clean.
That's always good. That isn't exactly one of our strong points here in India, but if you were to think about some of the good things, a lot of people in India are actually vegetarian, and almost everything is labeled veg or non-veg, and because of that, we get a lot less disease from meats and stuff like that. I mean, if you remember correctly, I've heard of this thing called mad cow disease, which was spread when a lot of people were eating red meat here in the United States.
Yeah, and that's not good, because a lot of people eat red meat, as Hari said, and red meat transmits diseases very easily. So, and that leads into cleanliness. How does cleanliness affect this health issue? So in the US here, on the photo in the left of this slide, it's a hormone exam room. And as you can see, it's pretty clean and white, and it's very individualized, which is basically the standard stereotype for a US doctor's office. It's nice and clean, it's nice and organized, and only one person is allowed in, and not a lot of visitors are allowed in.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, but kind of not in the places we have in India. However, there's a lot less restriction on it, and there can be multiple people in a single ward, and outside of that, visitors are a lot more common. I mean, you can just go walk in and say, hey, I want to see my cousin, and
go to his ward. Exactly. That's the problem.
In groups of like 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, that's the problem with Ebola these days, is the traditions favor kissing the dead, which then transmits the Ebola virus and kills the kisser.
It doesn't exactly get quite that extreme, but it's a similar issue in contact-borne and airborne diseases.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Ebola in India. So, now on to the next slide, the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration here in the U.S. That's the major problem here with medication. The problem with it is it takes about 10 years to get a drug approved through the FDA, which, and there is no FDA in India. So that makes it so that drugs here are less advanced, and the advanced drugs go to India.
Yeah, well, on top of that, since we don't have that kind of system, other people like us and us, mostly actually, paved the way towards all these new cures and drugs. And you have things like 3D printed organs, cures for diseases that haven't even been found in the US yet, and stuff like that, where the FDA doesn't have to pass these to be approved. As long as they've been tested and they work, you get through this process in as little as a year, putting the US close to 9 years behind on each individual thing, which could stack up to a lot of time.
And that's why American firms, such as the one pictured in this slide, who create these 3D printing machines that 3D print organs from live cells, they'll go to India, where the Indians don't have an FDA, and so they'll be able to put their 3D printing machines to work in India. And so, in conclusion, we can assume that, I think this is fair, that the U.S. is much more cleanly but less advanced in terms of cutting-edge technology. Do you think that's right?
I think that's about right. I mean, there's some improvements that can come out of either side of the equation, but overall, each is kind of like giving and taking one advantage for another advantage.
Yeah.
Yet there's still some things that could be improved in both situations.
Yeah, that's pretty much like the caste system, which could be improved in India, and
versus the FDA process, which could take a little shorter in times of dire need, like the Ebola crisis.
Exactly. So that's just about it for us and talking about healthcare between India and the U.S.
Yeah, just some quick last-minute pointers I want to give out. A, you probably don't want to take shrooms. B, you probably shouldn't eat red meat. 3, you almost definitely shouldn't smoke weed. And lastly, but definitely not least, please go get yourself some health care.